Okay. Trying to get my stats here, Dave. Some very disheartening and disappointing stats, as I'm sure you're not surprised by.
Yeah, they're.
I mean, basically nothing is going right.
No.
Which is, I don't know if we should be. We're surprised because we kind of watched it for 5 days.
I'm a little surprised. I thought the defense would be going right. I thought they'd have a good defense.
Yeah, after a while, I mean, you can't keep putting the burden on them. They'll eventually quit, which, you know.
We're having production issues out the door.
How did you just miss this 10-minute conversation we were having about?
Yeah, no, I heard it. I heard it, but I didn't realize it was happening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was happening live while we were talking.
Okay.
All right. All right. Whenever you're ready to go, we can launch because I'm ready to talk.
All set.
The Miami Dolphins season is 5 games in the book, and so far, Dave, nothing has gone right. The early reviews are in, and it's all 2 thumbs down, Dave.
I made all my deadlines, Omar. Something's gone right. That's about it.
Always about you, Dave. Always about you. This team is 1-4 starting the season. Obviously, we all knew that the first stretch of games was going to be pretty tough. But the question is, can they rebound from this slow start? Can they get everything that's gone wrong going right? Brian Flores has done that the past 2 seasons, Dave. 0-7 start in 2019, rebounded it to win 5 of the final 9 games. And then last year, started 1-4. And then, started 1-3. 1-3. Yeah. We hyped that up and then heading into the Tampa Bay game. And then Tom Brady and the Buffalo Bills put up a 45-17 loss where Brady was actually laughing at the Dolphins the entire game because what they were doing was so disappointing, putrid, disrespectful that he found it hilarious.
Omar, he had a thumb injury. It's come out. He might miss. I mean, he's not going to miss probably, but it's questionable for this Sunday's game. In the second quarter, he threw 3 touchdowns with a bad thumb.
He's Brady. He's the GOAT. And really, he's Tom Brady. So let's be fair about this.
He's 44. Come on. Let's not be fair.
He is Tom Brady. And if you can't pressure him, you're in for a long day. And the Dolphins got absolutely no pressure, Dave. What lessons have we learned, not only just from that 45-17 shellacking to Tom Brady, but think about the Buffalo Bills. They put up 35-0. These are 2 teams that could possibly be playing late in the Super Bowl. What have we learned about the Dolphins?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you laid it out there that good offenses are going to score points on them, in part because their defense hasn't. I mean, Brian Flores said after the game we weren't in sync. I mean, that was the definition. That was the definition of not in sync. Okay, for a defense, but also their offense puts a lot of pressure on them. I mean, their offense. You didn't expect them to run the ball against a team that has been led the league in rushing defense last year and is 20 yards better than any team this year already. And so so it came down to, could the offense keep the ball passing? And the difference, it's interesting. They scored 17 points, the Dolphins. They scored on their first 2 drives. So your feeling all day was, well, the offense is doing pretty good because they scored on the first 2 drives. They really didn't do anything to help out. So, look, the defense collapsed, the offense collapsed. I think that sums up the season right there.
But is it over, Dave? I say it's not.
No, it's not.
We've got plenty more football to play, plenty more winnable games. Question is, can they produce a winning record? I'm not too sure about that. But let's get to our first question, which comes from Lance, who wants to get right to it. And this is what the people have come to see and hear, Dave. Has Brian Flores lost this team? They're calling the games like they're a team scared to lose.
If there's anybody who should know when people lose, a coach lose a team, it's us, Omar. We've seen it. We've seen it over the last. I've seen it for 20 years. You've seen it when you come in 2007, 8, something like that.
2007, yeah.
Here is the textbook definition of losing a team. After a loss in 2007, the whole Dolphins defensive line, all veterans, all tough guys, very upstanding citizens, came out after a game and said they do not like Cam Cameron and they don't like the way. That is losing a team, okay? What you have now is frayed edges and questions because they're losing. Things aren't working. And if it happens, okay, if it goes on, yes, eventually players get upset and coaches get upset, and it's human nature to start. We got a lot more room to run before we get there.
Yeah, I will say this about the situation. A lot of this is come to head because Tua's trainer, and he's not just Tua's trainer. People got to understand, he's also trains a number of Miami Dolphins players. He expressed some tweets that basically raised questions and concerns about Brian Flores' grasp on the team and whether or not players like him, whether or not players feel like they can talk to him and communicate with him, whether or not he listens. And those are all things that I've heard and heard consistently. And if you're not Flo's guy, basically you fall on deaf's ear. And what I find very interesting is that a lot of Flo's guys now, people have watched over the years, there's no safety in being a Flo guy. The Brian McCain's of the world shown the door. The Eric Rowe benched. There's no safety in being Flo's guy, and really he doesn't listen. Has he lost the team? No, he has not lost the team. But there is this theory out there that Flo is a player's coach, and I can tell you that's not a fact. That's fiction. Just because he's black, people have this mentality that he's going to be a player's coach, and it's not true. And I think that it's not just Flo, but a lot of the defensive players do not have any confidence in Josh Boyer and the calls that he's making right now. And let's not even get started on the offense. Half the time they don't know who's in charge, which now they've streamlined things. When we were bringing this whole issue up about who's calling plays, why is the system so complicated? Brian Flores was a genius in his own mind because he thought it was so smart. Well, all the chefs in the kitchen make for a very complicated meal. And I think that that's what he's learned in the early start of the season. And now they've streamlined things where George Gesicki is the only person communicating with the quarterbacks. We'll see how that goes.
Well, we'll see how it goes, because part of that is Charlie Fry was here because of Tua. He was Tua's quarterback coach, his whisperer, whatever you want to call it. And now when Tua went out, okay, the idea was to have someone who knew Tua to talk to him right before a play, point out things. That's the theory. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. That was the theory. Now Tua maybe comes back this Sunday. Do they stick with this streamlined process?
No. He said,
I know what they're saying. I know what they're saying, Omar.
You think they're going to lie to us again?
No, not. I just want to see where this goes, because Charlie Fry was here for a reason, and that was to help Tua. And so we'll see. We'll see. I was not a fan of this whole. You have 15 seconds to call it, think of a play, call a play, get it in, and pass along any last second, because the mic shuts off. The mic shuts off in the NFL, and you have 2, 3, 4. I don't know how. You have a few people involved in that process. That can get very stressful, I'm sure, at times.
Yeah, stressful is an understatement.
All right, Omar, UCR 42 has a good question.
Important for a Tom Coughlin team, and he's part of the. He was on the Bill Parcells tree, and you know how Bill Parcells, abuse is their nature. Like, that's just, if you're on that tree, abuse is part of what you sort of do.
Well, remember, it was a different time in football too. We're talking the 80s, the 90s. I mean, Sean Payton's on that tree. You don't never hear anything like that. So I mean, there's evolution in
that is true. And Brian Flores, what I find interesting about Brian Flores is that he has a very young staff. And I initially thought that staff was young primarily because they needed to be able to relate to this generation of players. They needed to be able to figure out how to reach them and how to communicate with them. And I saw Adam Gase's staff go through that as well, because they were having similar issues in terms of this generation of players is different. It is different. They do not accept hard coaching. They don't. It's just the nature of this generation of young people. And so coaches have to find a way to relate to them. I don't think Brian Flores has a hard, chewing nails kind of mentality. And in fact, I think he's been very open and receptive in this end to what players recommend in terms of coaching, which is kind of the irony of people saying that he doesn't listen and doesn't communicate. So, I really don't know what to think, because I see it one way, and trust me, I don't think that he is Mr. Friendly, because he's certainly not that way with the media, but I see him trying. So I see him trying, and I see his staff trying. The problem is when you have a situation where no matter what you do and no matter what you coach, you're not having success with it, then it becomes you. You can't say it's execution for forever. Because sometimes, like in the Brady situation, you're playing man-on-man against Brady, where he's got 3 Pro Bowlers there. And you don't have help from your safeties. You don't have help from your linebackers. You're going to be exposed.
Sorry, Omar. I'm sorry. You're Xavier Howard. You're the best corner of football. You don't get exposed, okay? You're. This is what you relish, playing the tops and tops. And the defense is built on you not getting help. Okay, Byron Jones, good cover. You're going to get beat once in a while. They got beat. They had a bad day. That's fine. But that's what this defense is, right? I mean, if you can't trust,
but they also have to get pass rushing pressure.
Right.
A quarterback can't hold the ball all day. Can't be under pressure where he feels like he's playing. He's throwing balls in practice. Like, that can't be the way. Like, you can't expect success against a quarterback, especially a quarterback of Tom Brady's nature, when he gets to hold the ball all day.
Yeah. And Tom Brady chuckling, and I thought they had a chance because coming off New England, Flores and Boyer knowing Brady and being able to tweak the Belichick game, that was loose thinking by me. But I will say this on Flores, the surprising thing to me. Well, a couple things. First of all, when he came here and he was asked about, the Bill Belichick mentality of not listening to players, and it was very clear talking to people. His way with coaching as an assistant was different, which was to build relationships with players, get to know them, build relationship, and then they trust him. Okay, that's not the Belichick way. So that's one thing. Is that changed? Some things changed as the head coach, but I think that's still a centerpiece. The surprising thing to me, Omar, about these Dolphins, Brian Flores is a tough guy. He grew up tough. He came up through the ranks from the bottom. His career is a testament to being tough. And this isn't a tough team. They don't block tough. They don't run the ball. aren't physically, so far on defense, they aren't tough. And so
they have never made it a priority. And I've been complaining about that since even before they got here. They became a finesse team under Gase, and they never really made successful efforts to get tougher. Yeah, they drafted the Christian Wilkins and the Raekwon Davis and the Solomon Kinley.
They've drafted linemen out the wazoo. I mean,
none of them good.
Well, it's.
Name me the good linemen. Name me the good linemen they drafted.
I think the defensive line is going to be very good. Okay, when it grows up. I do. Christian Wilkins is. Well, they didn't show. Yeah.
Where?
I'm come on. Last week, and I can't say it, but I look individually. Christian Wilkins is good. Raekwon Davis can be very good. Jalen Phillips, a month into his career, he's showing signs that yes,
Zach Siler. I'm sorry. We have watched, and I hate to keep bringing this up. We watched Casey Rogers' defensive lines for years and years and years. That's a good defensive line. Tony Sperano's team. You were not going to outcoach Tony Sperano. It wasn't hard to outcoach Tony Sperano. But the one thing you were not going to do is you weren't going to push his teams around.
Right.
And this team gets pushed around every single Sunday. And it's something that predates Flores.
That's the surprising thing to me because Brian Flores, he's a tough individual, very tough. And his team isn't playing that way. Has never played tough. Has never, ever played tough. I mean, mentally they haven't let the season collapse on them, so they've been tough in that regard. But
Brian Fitzpatrick has not let the season collapse on them.
Okay, Omar.
I hate, and people always poo-pooed when I said this. They always, you never give him any credit. You never give him any credit.
Who?
Brian Fitzpatrick is responsible for the majority of Brian Flores' wins.
Yeah,
that
it's like
team,
2008, right? When Chad Pennington came in, and he was the reason they were great. They had a very good team, and so. All right, Omar, short and direct. Is there any realistic scenario, LF asked this, any realistic scenario where this season can still be considered a success?
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. I still think that they can rebound and preserve this season. We talked last week, and I think my number was 6 or 7 wins that they can get to after that Tampa Bay stretch. Jacksonville. Worst team in the NFL, arguably. Atlanta, nothing special about them. Buffalo, you're going to get your butt kicked. Let's be real about it again. Houston, really, are they even trying? Are we sure? Baltimore.
They almost beat New England.
Yeah. Baltimore, okay, they're going to kick your face in, as Baltimore usually kicks your face in. And the Jets, you play the Jets twice. And then there's New England. There's plenty of opportunities for wins there.
But Omar, the question, a success. You recover. You recover and win 7 games, and you beat the teams that you did. This was to be a progressive step forward. Now, the only way this season can be a success to me is Tua. I mean, that's it. From here, if he shows you things you haven't seen, well, you saw him one game, really, the Arizona game, his first start. If he shows signs of taking big steps forward, that okay,
he's in the preseason. Come on, let's not deny that. You saw the efficiency in the
preseason training camp.
This out to me. At the end of the season, he could not throw the ball, and defenses were playing him as if he couldn't throw the ball, and it was very telling. The offense that they were running, and it was very limiting. Now, you can't go out there and run Tua with a limited offense. But unfortunately for Tua, on the flip side of this, Jacoby Brissett is battling a hamstring injury. Brian Flores acknowledged that he tried to bench him a couple of times, and Brissett wouldn't allow it, which props to him. He went out there and he kept fighting. But now you've got 2 injured quarterbacks, Dave. One with ribs, another with hamstrings, which means he's got a bum wheel. comfortable heading into Jacksonville, a winless Jaguars team?
Well, there's only one thing there's only one thing that makes me comfortable heading into this game, and that's Jacksonville's defense. They are 29th, I believe, in scoring, 28th. So it's not a good defense. And as tough as Jacoby Brissett was, to me, he didn't make the plays that I thought he could. I saw him making training camp. I saw the passes in training camp that I thought there was more there, and he wasn't looking downfield much. I just, if Tua's ready, there was never any question they're going back to him. But now right. I think any question that Jacoby Brissett would be some insurance plan or whatever, that's out the window. It's Tua all the way, even more now.
So do you put a 70% Tua out there?
Yeah, I don't know percentage. The question is this: how do you feel? How does he feel? What does the doctor say?
Of course he's going to tell you he feels great. Of course he's going to tell you.
Yeah, put him out there.
Okay. Put your career on the line.
Look, you're a coach. You've watched people throw footballs for decades. How does he look? Is he wincing as he throws? Is his ball have any zip? I mean, there's a million ways to measure it if you're an NFL, and that's what they're going to be looking at. If he can't throw the ball, as you say, his arm is, we've seen it. It's not impressive, okay? And if he goes out there and throws even the ribs affect even that much, then you can't put him out there.
Showtime has our next question, Dave. When Tua returns, will we see them still try the RPO on with different playmakers?
Well, that's what they practice. I mean, that's what their whole training camp was about. That's what the off season was about. That's who Tua, his strength is. So, yes. I mean, short answer, yes.
Yes.
He goes out a few weeks, you reinvent the whole offense and say.
Well, they kind of did with Jacoby.
Because he can't run the RPO, right?
I think he can.
He wasn't comfortable. That wasn't who he was.
It wasn't his lane.
Yeah, and that was a bit of the mystery to me. If you're going to put in this offense, you'd think he'd have two quarterbacks and maybe they couldn't find another one.
I don't think they could. In fact, I looked at what was available in the offseason, and there was nothing available in terms of quarterbacks who can run the RPO. But yes, as we said, we get the opportunity to see a lot of things that the fans haven't seen. And in training camp, in the offseason program, it was RPO, 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 RPO. And then we get to the season, we saw RPO week 1, and then we saw RPO for 2 drives. And then it was no more RPO. Or maybe a sprinkling of RPO. Myles Gaskin and Salvon Ahmed. See, got it right this time.
Good job.
They have got to get going. And, I'm glad and proud of the Dolphins coaches because they finally said, hey, I know we got pass protection issues, but let's not play our third running back 70% of the time. Let's actually play our first running back the majority of the time and see how that plays out. And, Myles Gaskin caught, a ridiculous amount of
10 passes.
Check-down passes, yeah. But I mean, that's part of the RPO offense. So putting it in your top playmakers' hands, let's not be naive about this. Say whatever you want about Myles Gaskin, and yes, he's not my first choice of running backs. That guy happens to be in Pittsburgh right now, just tearing it up, setting new records in the NFL. But Myles Gaskin is pretty good in the RPO, and so is Salvon Ahmed. And I'm sorry, but they need to be playing. And I know that they're turnstiles from a pass protection standpoint. Okay, then play 2 tight ends, and sometimes have guys stay in. That's what coaching is for. That's what, you have all these weapons. You've got, 17 tight ends on the roster? I think you could find 2 that can block and help out this offensive line. Proud of the changes that they made to the offensive line. I'll give you an applause for that. Finally, problem solving. Let's continue this trend here. We got a long list of problems. Let's hope by the time we get to maybe mid-season, 6 of them will be fixed.
Yeah, look, Myles Gaskin, it was time, and he had a nice game. You could see why you watch him in practice and last year, and you say, okay, he has a nice role. My question said there's a James White role, like New England, a pass catching receiver, an occasional runner, but a third down back, second, third down. He's my guy. Just is he the workhorse? Then we're talking roster development and to your end, who they picked and all that. But look, Gaskin's a nice player. It's just to me a role. Okay, Omar, Silky Calloway 72 asks, what role does Marino have in all this? No shade, just curious as to what he actually does and what he thinks.
Marino stands around, watches a lot, and when he's asked a question, he answers it.
Yeah.
And he tells the quarterbacks, he sits in quarterback meetings, and he says, just sling it.
And let it fly. Yeah.
Let it fly. Yeah. I'm sorry. Let me quote him accurately. If I'm going to quote him, let me quote him accurately. Let it fly.
Yeah. There was another line from those days. That was his favorite line. The line the team would say about him was, if Dan ain't going, we ain't. If Dan ain't throwing, we ain't going. So there were several rhyming little lines like that when he was playing. But his roles.
I didn't even know the "Let It Fly" was from back in the '80s.
Oh yeah, that was his line back then. Pick a guy, let it fly. Yeah, that was his offense.
And he says the same thing. He gives that great wisdom and advice to Tua. Pick a guy, let it fly.
Yeah. It was telling when Tua was asked in the summer. In August about footwork in the pocket, and did he ever ask Marino? And he said no. I mean, Marino's role is he's there watching practices. If anybody has any questions, and then he sits with the owner on Sunday. That is probably his biggest role inside the franchise. If I have no idea, and let me just say that I have no idea of any discussions or anything like that they have, but he's there. He's there in the inner circle. Sitting with it. And remember, Mike Tannebaum always made sure he sat with the owner on Sunday to get his, they aren't using that guy right. Or why did they do that?
Yeah.
Always, so,
Chris Greer was sitting behind me this week and his staff.
Okay.
That always makes it very uncomfortable. I can't give my one-liners.
Who used to sit in the press box and would curse loudly. And I never knew this till my first watching the Oakland Raiders or LA Raiders. Al Davis would sit. He sat right behind me one press box, and he's pounding and cursing loud, like in front of all these writers. I thought it was the strangest experience of a football game. NFL owner, cursing at plays. So
it was deafening silence yesterday. Let me just put it that way. Last week.
Miami Lev has one, Omar. Do you think they are not including Mike Gesicki as much in the game plan for negotiating an upper hand? Seems like something Greer would do. I think we're overthinking this a little.
Yeah, no. I take objection to Chris Greer being thrown. One, Chris Greer doesn't control coaching, doesn't control play calling, and Chris Greer doesn't have the blocking deficiencies that Mike Gesicki has, which is, you know how I feel about those blocking deficiencies. A Dallas Goedert, who is the one who I always advocated that they should have selected instead of Mike Gesicki, a one-dimensional player. It's very telegraphing when Mike Gesicki's on the field, which is why, unfortunately, he pretty much hadn't played much until last week's game, until they were down and trailing and had to clearly throw the ball. I think that Mike Gesicki will be franchise tagged. The tag is like $10 million. It buys them some time. I'm not sure how committed this team is to Mike Gesicki. If you look at where this team is talent-wise, they've got a lot of receivers, not a lot now, because obviously Devontae Parker's hurt, Will Fuller's hurt. I doubt either one of them play, so there's not a lot of receivers right now. But when you do play Mike Gesicki, he's a glorified slot receiver. You're not putting him on the line. You're flexing him out. He's an H-back slot receiver. So it's kind of hard. And I was having this conversation coming up to this game. Like, why do teams, and I hate to put this in the universe, why do teams even put a linebacker on Mike Gesicki? Because it's not like, hey, he might run. They might run while he's on the field. Like, I'm defending him with a safety, if not a cornerback, and I might throw a nickel on that because he's running routes. So, yeah, okay, he can high point the ball, but I'd rather have a guy stick with him than a guy not stick with him. But in terms of why he hasn't played that much, because they've had such offensive line issues. You need the Durham Smites, the Adam Shaheens, the Carton, Sentinel Carter. You need those blocking guys because otherwise your quarterback's under a significant amount of pressure, and the offensive line has been a turnstile. Now, they got a little bit better last week, and we'll see if they continue to make progress. But until you shore up that protection, it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm going to go completely opposite of you. I cannot understand why they aren't using Mike Gesicki more in the passing game. Here you have, for all this talk of exciting targets, you don't have them. You don't have exciting. He is one. Get him out wide. Get him into mismatch. That's what the NFL is about, mismatches. You have a great target who can be a mismatch.
I just told you, guy. I'm not defending him with the linebacker. So how are you going to create this mismatch?
Anybody defending him, I can use him as a mismatch. Get him in a linebacker. I want a linebacker to cover him.
But I'm not putting one out there on you.
But they have at times.
They're dumb.
And every time a linebacker's on him, okay, that's where I'm going if I'm the quarterback. Okay. And look, it was mystifying and telling their thoughts on him in the New England opener when he played about a third of the plays. Okay. To this question, look, coaches don't look at, we're going to negotiate, or Chris Greer doesn't want. They don't think that way. That's not how they think.
These guys are in survival mode.
Yes, they're thinking of winning. And to me, Mike Gesicki helps you win. And why isn't he? Yes, he's not a blocker. Fine, put him out wide. Put him in the slot. Find ways to creatively use him. It's telling to me that his greatest success was with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick found a way to use Mike Gesicki in a way.
Up there and let Mike go get it.
Let him go
Same thing with Devontae Parker.
Mike Gesicki runs a little better routes and all that. Then Parker is really the ultimate sandlot player, right? I mean,
yes, Parker does not run great routes, but I feel like part of the reason that they've gotten off to this slow start is because they spent off season banishing every leader on the team, like with very few exceptions. Not that we liked those players or that they were good players, but they were leaders. And they helped you rally the team and recover to get to 10-6. Now, Ryan Fitzpatrick, say whatever you want about him, but he helped Myles Gaskin become Myles Gaskin. He helped Mike Gesicki become Mike Gesicki, and he helped Devontae Parker. And those are the three players. You need to be stepping up. And unfortunately, I'm not very comfortable with Tua in helping them step up because Tua's not a guy. He's admitted. I'm not throwing to a guy who's covered.
Yeah, and who won the leadership award last year? Right. So that's the void Tua needs to step in, though, and
yes,
and find how to get more. And look, it was a game and 6 plays or something this year. So now we'll see. Now we'll see where we are. Hopefully, if he plays on Sunday. Well, in terms of different starts to the 2021 season, how they go. The Jacksonville Jaguars had the crown until John Gruden was forced out of Vegas because of his remarks he said about black people, women, homosexuals, name any group. I'm sure there's an email with John Gruden's name on it. But before this week, Urban Meyer was the coach / executive on the hot seat for his complicated incident in an Ohio bar that didn't involve his wife and the fact he didn't fly back with his team. The Jaguars have been reeling since. They were really before, but they're really reeling since, keeping the losing streak going. The best way to have people move on to another subject is to win. Omar, do you see the Jaguars doing this Sunday against Miami?
Well, we've got a game where 2 desperate teams are facing off in another continent where they're basically hidden from the world, even though they'll actually have the undivided attention of the NFL is the 9:30 game. Everybody's going to wake up, eat their breakfast, drink their coffee, and watch a little bit of the NFL just because that's what we do as Americans. And here's the question that I ask. Who wants to embarrass themselves less? and who is motivated to actually have a good feeling this week? And I look at this from this standpoint. We talked a little bit earlier in the show about whether or not the team has quit on Brian Flores. Oh, we'll know on Sunday. We will know on Sunday. Remember the last time this team was in London, Dave? How many?
And this is our chance to get, and I'm sure they are, to get things back on track. Okay. And look, Jacksonville is bad, but the difference is people expected Jacksonville to be bad. Maybe not this bad, but they were expected to have a bottom of the league type feel to them as they were rebuilding. The Dolphins
too. But hey, we all learn. We all learn.
All right. Omar, our questions from Chris. How do you approach Trevor Lawrence as a defensive coordinator?
I think if you're Josh Boyer, you got to go back to some of the things that you were doing that was helpful and resourceful in 2020. And I do feel like a lot of teams have caught up to what they were doing and have adjusted to it and figured out how to attack it. I mean, they've had a whole offseason to study people's film. The amoeba defense, where everybody is standing around, hovering around. You don't know who's coming. You don't know who's going. You don't know who's rushing. You don't know who's dropping back in coverage. How much have you seen that this year, Dave?
Yeah, you haven't seen it at all. That's an interesting point. You're right.
Josh Boyer says, I've shown it some. It just looks different. And my thought, I should have said to him, well, maybe make it look like it did last year. And then maybe you might have the results that you have. But even the Sam Eglavons, he's played a lot in the blitzing package. But if he comes on the field, I know he's blitzing. So I think they're doing a lot of telegraphing what their intents are. And I would not only just get back to what I was doing last year that was successful, basically trying to shovel coverages Xavier Howard's way. Not that Xavier's playing great, but you feasted off turnovers. But you got to get pass rushing pressure to get those turnovers. A lot of those balls were balls a little bit behind or balls a little bit misplaced, and Xavier Howard went and got it. Well, if you're not getting that pressure, it's hard to get those misplaced balls. So you need to get back to getting pressure on quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence is a young, inexperienced green quarterback, and you should make him look like he's a young, inexperienced green quarterback.
I mean, that's exactly right. He's got 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions this year, 59% completion rate. His rating is like 71. He's looking like a rookie in a struggling offense. And the question is, look, everybody knows he's good. You would still take him, right, if he's sitting there in the draft. But he's having the type of rookie year on a bad team that a lot of rookies had. And so this is one where Brian Flores, you saw what he did to Justin Herbert last year, another rookie who was playing, pretty well at the time. But he has the ability, him and Josh Boyer have the ability to confuse young quarterbacks. And
had the ability.
Well, they still have the ability, Omar. Come on, you don't lose that. Let's
certainly looks like they've lost it to me.
Well, when Mac Jones didn't solve them, I mean, he was throwing checkdowns the whole game. Tom Brady's age 44.
Mac Jones looked like a Pro Bowl player that first game.
He looked good.
Yeah.
So.
Javier has a good one, Dave. How does our O-line and our D-line match up against Jacksonville? And
pretty good, because they're not very good on the lines.
Neither one are very good.
The defensive line, yards per rush, it's about average in the NFL. The offensive line is bad at creating runs. Now.
Oh, you talking about Jacksonville or mine?
Yeah, Jacksonville. I'm talking Jacksonville. Okay.
Oh, okay.
They don't have much rushing offense. Part of that could be they've been behind a lot and they're throwing the ball. But they do have a couple good running backs. Well, one and so
James Robinson's having a phenomenal year.
Yes.
5.8 yards per carry, 4 rushing touchdowns already, 77 yards per game. I'll take that any day.
Yeah, the question, you see that, and you see the Dolphins having trouble. So why wouldn't you ride that if you're
trouble is an understatement, Dave.
But then again, if you're Urban Meyer, they had James Robinson doing that, and on a goal line with the game on the line, they took him out and put in Carlos Hyde to run the ball, and you're like, oh, what's cool? So they got coaching issues. They got issues in Jacksonville.
Yeah, but I think that, every team runs against Miami because that's their get-right game in terms of you can run the ball against the Dolphins. It's very easy to do. I think at some point, and you touched on it early in the show, you got to get tougher. I'm sorry, but I'm tired of this team being pushovers. And if there's anything, I don't care if you lose, don't allow the opponent to run for 100 yards. You got to put a stop to this. Every team you've placed has run 100 yards. Every back has had a season best game and performance. Now, imagine if James Robinson gives you a season best performance. That's an L.
That would, I get back to that. I'm surprised that it's not a tougher team, physically imposing. Okay, Mike has our next one, Omar. The fireworks are going off on this one. Would the team have been better off keeping Mike Tannebaum, considering he was the one person pounding the table on ESPN? He was pounding the table for Justin Herbert. I'll let you lead off with this one, Omar.
You know what? I went to war with Mike Tannebaum in the 2020 draft over his views on Tua and Justin Herbert. Mike Tannebaum was the one man standing on top of a soapbox and saying, "You're crazy if you draft Tua over Justin Herbert. This is a bad decision." And he basically was warning his former executive, don't do this. And it was a bold stance. It was a strong conviction. And he was convicted by it. And lo and behold, Dave, I must acknowledge that he is right. We were all wrong. And I would like to humbly apologize to Mike Tannebaum.
That's hard to do, I know, for you, Omar. Being a big now let's go back there for a second. He wasn't the only one. Chris Sims, NBC, rated all the quarterback, and he went long and hard on Justin Herbert and why he didn't like Tua. Mel Kiper, before the draft, said that Justin Herbert's going to be drafted before Tua. I mean, Rex Ryan on ESPN was saying he wouldn't take Tua because he didn't have 3 surgeries. He's had 5 at Alabama. And so there was I wrote a column about this at the time and a blog and et cetera. So, but to answer the question, just keep it there. Would they have been better off keeping Tannebaum? If he would have taken Herbert, yes, they would have been better off. I mean, right now, Mike Tannebaum, to bring this to today, he rates quarterbacks every week for the 33. I believe it's not for ESPN. He has a website called 3013. He rates Herbert number 1 in the league. So would they have been better off? Yeah. And remember, let's put this in context too. Mike Tannebaum, when he was the head of football operations for the Dolphins, wrong on decisions. You could go down the list, and now he gets out, and his first big provocative decision was 100% absolutely correct. And yes, I said it. The guy in that chair, Tannebaum, Greer, Ireland, we can go back through the list. 60% of their job is getting that quarterback. And if it had been Herbert, so many other questions would be solved.
And keep this in mind. I'm not giving up on Tua. I believe in Tua. Tua's efficiency, accuracy, anticipation, pocket presence hints that he should be good in time. The problem is, as you've accurately pointed out many times, Herbert's good now, right this very minute. He's the top 5 quarterback in the league.
I wish we didn't have to have this conversation again over another pair of quarterbacks, but here we are.
Yeah, and I'm not saying. One thing I will say is I've become a very big fan. I was not a Mike Tannebaum fan when he was the GM of the Miami Dolphins. Was not. But since he's been on ESPN, and I've been allowed an opportunity to hear his daily thought process and how he articulates himself and how he presents things, I'm like, man, now I understand how you stole Gesicki's job. I really do get it.
You think it's easier maybe than when you actually have the power and have the decisions and people coming at you? I think you can sound good on TV. He didn't do a good job with the Dolphins. I
won't even say he did a bad job with the Jets because they went to AFC Championship games. So and they were playing in the same division as Tom Brady, the greatest of all time. But I got to admit, not only did he get an apology from me here because I was wrong, he was right, but I gained a respect for Mike Tannebaum watching how he articulates himself and how he presents things. It is like you're watching a lawyer in a meeting room, and he persuades me a lot of times. He makes a very strong argument, and I sit and I watch him and I say, "Damn, that's how you stole Gesicki's job. That's how you snaked the guy and just took all power because you come across as the smartest guy in the room." Now, the question is, can you evaluate football players? And with Justin Herbert and Tua, he did.
With Josh Allen, with Lamar Jackson, you can go down. He didn't, okay? And so he had the power to affect change. And now as you pointed out before the show, he was right on Ryan Tannehill. He just didn't put any team around him so everybody else could see that he was right. So, I mean, he had his chance.
There is a classic story that I've been told by executives in the draft room about that Lamar Jackson draft. And I know you've heard versions of it, and I've heard versions of it, and I've gone to the sources and asked what happened. They actually had to be taken to a separate office to hash it out. And, man, it's these decisions are not as easy as people think, and the conversations are not as easy as people think. And
well, here's what I've been told happened, and I've heard it from two people here. So and they completely the same story, which was when it came to the Dolphins pick. Was it 10, 11? When did they make a Fitzpatrick that year?
10, 11. I'll tell you.
So it came to their pick, and Steve Ross said we could trade down for Lamar Jackson. He wasn't saying let's do it. He wasn't saying he was.
That's correct.
Let's discuss it. And Chris Greer, to his credit, and he had a conviction for Minka Fitzpatrick. And
there were coaches fighting against Lamar Jackson.
Yes, because with Lamar Jackson, questions of accuracy, you'd have to build a whole offense around him. He's the MVP of the league. He could be it again. I mean, that would have been the pick again. And actually, my second guess isn't there. It's why didn't they come up like Baltimore did in the 32nd pick and trade for him up there? Okay,
because the coach was committed to Adam. Because the coach was committed to Ryan Tannehill.
Okay, that's the bottom line. We don't need to rehash all these issues.
Yeah. I would love to hear the stories about the Herbert Tua. None of those have trickled out. You notice that, right?
They'll be coming out. They'll be coming in a few years. Well, you know what? You know what I am hearing? Oh, this person really wanted Herbert. I am hearing that now, and I'm not buying any of that. I don't want to.
No. You got to say it. You got to say it back then when it happened.
Yes. Okay. Eric asks our last one, and it's a whopper, Omar. If you're Steve Ross, the Dolphins owner, and your team loses to the Jags, what are you doing and who are you firing? Boy, everybody's on the trigger. Everybody's on that trigger.
Yeah. And I wrote a column about this in the Sun Sentinel, which addressed basically the 10 issues that this team has to fix. And I'm looking at this to-do list. The rib injury derails Tua. You got to get Tua back online. Offense ranks 31st in points scored and yardage. Clearly, you got to fix that. The defense, they can't get off the field on third downs. This team is allowing 57.1% of third downs to be converted. Offensive line has been terrible. How do I say it in Charles Barkley's voice? Terrible. It's been terrible all year. Hopefully they fix that. Struggling run game. You don't even struggle. No, I'm sorry. Struggling run defense. We're going to get to the run game. Struggling run defense, 4.4 yards per carry. You rank 24th at allowing 136 rushing yards per game. Teams run at you when they want to. They decide you have no control over it, and they have success. Defense isn't creating turnovers. Your magic at it last year. Obviously, something is off. The run game has been unreliable and underutilized. They can run the ball. They choose not to run the ball. The Dolphins are attempting the least carries per game this season, 19 carries in the NFL. They average the lowest 70.4 rushing yards. And I'm sorry, but this line, they can actually run block. They can. Now, and they would much rather run block than pass block. So maybe you should try that. Offenses lack of big plays. Didn't you draft Jalen Waddle, Will Fuller for this whole magical offense? Oh, we're going to be more explosive. Where has that been? Where's these explosive plays been, Dave? And then the lack of leadership. As I mentioned, banishing Ryan Fitzpatrick, Kyle Van Noy, Bobby McCain, Eric Flowers, Ted Karras. Those were all leaders on your team. And then you wonder why your young team that you're putting a lot of young players in positions and they're not exactly performing up to expectations or performing like the guys that they're replacing. And then second-year development. Last year, this team was built on second-year development. You had guys like Christian Wilkins and Preston Williams and Nick Needham taking that next step as NFL players. This year, Austin Jackson already moved to left guard, and again, I applaud you for it because he was not going to be a left tackle. Let's try to Von Ahmed, third running back, and he is a dangerous pass catcher. He is a really, truly dangerous pass catcher, which he's shown you. Offensive guard, Solomon Kinley and Robert Hunt. Have they really taken that next step? And we got to see what Raekwon and Tua do. But second-year development isn't happening. If it's me and I'm Steve Ross and I see all of those issues in Jacksonville, I'm saying to Brian Flores, I need one body. You give me one body.
To feel better about yourself? To feel why? To feel better? Or what?
No, a message has to be
Make
sent.
a statement? Make a statement?
A message has to be sent. We've seen this happen. We've seen Adam Gase send a message to his entire offensive line, firing 3 high draft picks.
You're not really using Adam Gase as a standard of how to.
You know, Adam Gase has a better record than Brian Flores, right?
I don't care about the record because the record is meaningless in 3 years here because of how they started, right? I mean, come on.
They purposely chose to start that way.
Yeah,
but anyway.
exactly. Yeah. So the record.
Okay. So let's go to the Tony Sparano, Bill Parcells. Remember the era where Bill Parcells, if you made a mistake in a game, you were being waived?
Yeah. He did. He fired a special teams coach after.
Exactly.
And so look, if something is that glaring on Sunday, and it's look, we're at that point, but I'm not going in saying we want to sacrifice ahead of time if we lose the game.
No. But if something goes wrong,
they're in a point of the schedule. Next couple games, they should look better because of the opposition. And starting November 1st, they play 57 games. There's 57 days. They have one game on the road, so they should start to look better. The question is that the opposition? Is that them? Okay, and look, firing. There'll be a time for that. I'm not sure it's week 6. Okay.
And you know Brian Flores is not scared about firing coaches.
Yeah, and that yes.
Well, Dave, it's prediction time. I'm actually going to do something that I think is very uncomfortable for myself. I'm going to predict the Dolphins to win the game. I have not had success in making this prediction much this season, but I'm predicting a 24-17 Dolphins victory in London.
Yeah, Omar, that you scared me there for a second. That I thought you were going to go the Jaguars. Look. You talk about we've talked most of the time about the Dolphins in trouble. Jacksonville is a rolling dumpster fire and going international. Okay. And so if this should be
the Dolphins before they got,
is he going to do the rebuild? I mean, so he's been rumored for the USC job even before this strange video and all this has come out. So, you have to pick the Dolphins here, and I'll go 28-17. I expect it to be – they should be 2-4 coming back from jolly old England.
2-4, and then the question is what happens from there. We will be here on X's and Omar's to dissect that every Wednesday here at noon. You can find X's and Omar's anywhere you find a podcast, on Apple, on whatever, wherever you find those podcasts. You could also find the show on the Sentinel website, reproduced in segments. And we look forward to seeing you next week here on X's and Omar Wednesday at noon.